Hello, Needham, and welcome to What's My House Worth? A show that helps you determine the value of your home. My name is Rob Ticktin. I'm a broker with Encompass Residential here in Needham. I'm also a builder through Daytick Development right here in town as well.
And I'm Ryan McDonnell. I own Hawthorne Real Estate. We are builders, we're brokers, and just general overall real estate know-it-alls.
Yes, and being a know-it-all is key for this show because we're going to be going over the sales data for the entire month of August. But first, let's just take a very broad view of the sales data for the month of August right here in Needham. And the numbers tell us that August was a pretty good month. Wouldn't you agree, Ryan?
Yeah, pretty solid. 39 homes sold with an average sale price of $859,000, which is up from last month of $746, and I think we'll see some reasons why later on in the show. Also up from last month is the average price per square foot, up to $323 from $304 last month. So.
Right, and it dipped a little bit, I felt like, last month,
yeah.
if I'm not mistaken. At $323 is closer to what it should be. Average days on market, to me, 57 is a pretty healthy number. Would you agree with that?
That's a very healthy number. I think if you can get your house sold and turned around in 60 days, that's pretty good.
Yeah, I don't think you'll see that in all the towns around the Boston area. Needham leading the charge, as it seemingly has been over the course of the last few months. And with that in mind, why don't we take a look at what's been happening in Needham over the course of the summer. We know, Ryan, we talked about it a number of times, that June things exploded, but it looks like July and August, things have held up pretty well.
Yeah, I would agree. I mean, we as we mentioned, 39 sales in the month of August, which is a pretty healthy number. It's up a little bit from last month, not quite where we were in June, but you know, it's pretty steady. Right,
so it was 30 in May, up to 64 in June, July 33, and now August we're, boom, right back up and climbing the charts up to 39. But how did this August of 2012 compare to the previous Augusts of the years leading up to 2012? And I think it stacks up well on that front as well.
Yeah, as you can see from the graphic, it's a pretty, you're getting what you'd expect out of August. So August is measuring up.
Yeah, it's 29, it was in 09, and then it was up to 38, and now it's kind of leveled off. In August of 2011, it was 39, and once again in 2012, it's also 39. So now that we've seen the broad view, it's time to look at a house-by-house examination, which brings us to 22 Miller Street.
Let's start on Miller Street, 2 days on market. You gotta like that. It's a big lot, small house, an estate sale, so there's a lot going on there. But you know, you're in Needham for $337,000.
And I believe this was a big lot as well.
Yeah, 13,000 square feet.
Right, so probably attractive to builders when you're talking about this price point.
Very, very much a possibility, so we'll keep an eye on that one.
Okay, and going right along as we kind of climb our way up from the lowest priced house to the highest priced house, we go to Wachusett, an area that's in a pretty good part of town. But when you look at the actual slope of the lot, it's a little bit of a strange story.
Yeah, they mentioned treehouse living. I mean, it's a unique street because it's basically right on that bluff that overlooks Perry Park. So the houses are all kind of very neatly configured. It's kind of an interesting spot.
Right, and they mentioned treehouse living with an exclamation point. So it's treehouse living.
Right.
And the house size was 900 square feet, but that included over 200 square feet in the lower level.
Right.
So that's a small space right there.
Yeah.
But it's presumably somebody who's buying it as a primary home or a secondary home, because I would think that a builder in that spot, it's a dangerous play.
I mean, it's a tough place to build. I mean, there has been some development over there, but you know, your lot's providing you with some decent challenges. I mean, it could be actually used for a very large treehouse.
Very large treehouse.
That's one option.
Another place for an even larger treehouse would be 216 Valley Road, because it's a significantly larger lot, 17,000 square feet. And again, we had a lot of listings, I feel like, in this area last month. What is going on with Valley?
I don't know. I mean, it's definitely an area where you've seen some turnover in the houses. There's been some new construction. It's partially attractive because the lots aren't necessarily as expensive as they are in other parts of town. You do have 128 there. It's a factor. But, I mean, there's plenty of development. And 17,000 square foot lot, there's a lot you can do with that.
And that is it Broadmeadow? Is that the school district for that lot?
It is.
And the noise, we were actually just there earlier this week, and you can definitely hear it. It's not overbearing.
It's a buzz.
It's a buzz. It's a background buzz. But like you said last month, people that live there say it's something you get used to.
Right.
And it's not something that necessarily distracts you.
Right, and it's price affected. So it's, I mean, you're definitely, you know, you're seeing the lot, a 17,000 square foot lot going for $425, where that size lot in another part of town is going to be $6 and up.
Okay, well, moving up to the next one, we have 27 Carroll. Again, this one was on the market for a little while. Started at $539, eventually worked its way down almost, what is that? Quick math, $80,000. 139 days on market. This neighborhood, good spot, somewhat of a quiet street. Somewhat, I say, because
it's an access point.
It's an access point. It's the entry and exit point for that neighborhood across the street from Olin College. So as a result, you get a little bit more traffic than you might think if you're parked out front.
Right.
But with that being said, do we know? I don't think we do know if it was a builder or not that bought the house. I know that the previous owner was a rental. But at that size, 10,000 square feet, and at that price point, you're certainly looking at a house that would work. Presumably from a development standpoint.
It fits the bill.
It fits the bill. 10,000 square feet seems to be the magic number, or somewhere thereabouts. On to Great Plain Avenue, and it's 1351 is the next house as we continue to climb. This one, 1351, thoughts?
My thoughts on this are mostly just an observation from looking at the listing. The listing description is a lot of adjectives. It's very descriptive. It's really describing the interior of the house, and it's sort of making you want to see it. But there aren't any pictures. So to me, it's like, how are you positioning this house? Are you positioning it as, hey, the house needs work, buying it as is, or look at this great opportunity, or is it a house that you're really trying to sell the interior because it didn't deliver that for me? Right.
The funny thing was, in the description, it was put sunny living room, of all things. And you put sunny living room and you don't show a picture. Maybe that's the agent's way of trying to tempt prospective buyers to see if
I have to see this living room.
Yeah, I'm real curious to see just how sunny this living room is.
Right.
So pictures are always key. It certainly helps to tell the story when you have a listing from a brokerage standpoint. 43 Avon Circle is a house that was on the market for a little while, and it was being advertised to both homeowners as well as builders.
Right.
Sold for $487,500.
One thing I want to point out here, we've had the opportunity to develop a couple of properties that have sloped from the sidewalk towards the backyard. And
so from front to back. From
front to back, yeah. And this one's another one of those. And what a lot of people will always come to you and say, well, geez, I'm really looking for a flat level lot. But one thing to remember with properties like this is with that slope, it enables you to get a walkout basement, which gives you essentially a second first floor in your lower level, which is very bright. It's at grade, and if the lot does level out in the back, it can be a really great advantage to the house.
So if there's anything better than a lot that is level, you would say it is a gently sloping front to back lot.
Yeah, you don't want it sloping from back to front, but sloping from front to back can be an advantage.
Right, or you don't want it too steep, sloping front to back, but gently. That's the key word.
Because there's a rolling hazard at that point.
That's right, and unless you have some tumbleweed on the property, that's not a good thing. 15 Hill, you want to talk location, location, location with 3 exclamation points and no spaces in between them. That's how it appeared in the listing sheet. Any thoughts on this one?
I think it's a very liberal use of the location, location, location mantra. This is probably not, I mean, no disrespect to 15 Hill Street, but I wouldn't consider it to be the primo Needham location if you're trying to draw somebody in with those buzzwords. I don't think this is the place to do it.
Right, and I would say probably the sales data would back that up. Right. That's just an arbitrary opinion on your part. Right, but you see something like that, every once in a while we come across something on a listing sheet where it just doesn't quite seem to kind of all come together. This being the example, location, 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 in an area that's not deemed by a lot of local people to be a desirable location. Usually what that means is potentially an out-of-town broker, and that was the case here.
Yeah, not a Needham know-it-all real estate agent like us.
Right, because being a Needham know-it-all agent gets you your own TV show.
Right.
After 15 Hill is 213 Dedham Ave, a little bit of a busier street than Hill. Ryan, what do you think about, hot tub overlooking patio?
I mean, you think of a hot tub, you think of a pool, you think of, is this going to attract people or detract people? I mean, in this case, it sold for asking in 5 days. So either the hot tub was something that this buyer was looking for, or that they didn't care. I mean, the one thing about a hot tub versus a pool is it's easier to get rid of.
And it's much warmer.
True.
And it's year-round you can use the hot tub.
Also true.
48 Mosley Avenue is next up on the list of homes that we are dissecting on What's My House Worth. Sold for $585,000.
And I mean, it's a good part of town. It's over by off Charles River in that section towards Dover. 40 days on market, quick sale. priced very well. I mean, I think all in all, pretty tight little package.
Yeah, the first floor and master bedroom jumped out at me because, for the most part, ordinarily, buyers of homes, especially families, like to have that master bedroom on the same floor as the other bedrooms. The next best thing, I would say, would be to have the master on the first floor with the kids' bedrooms on the second floor. Sometimes, not often, but sometimes you have the master bedroom above the kids. Would you agree that's your least desirable scenario?
That's definitely the most uncommon scenario, I would say.
Right, we have a lot uncommon, but it happens, and a lot of worrisome mothers don't like the thought of their kids sleeping on a level below them.
Which is probably why it's uncommon.
Right, but it is out there. 125 Standish is very close to that Carroll neighborhood that we talked about, Acquireder Street. But this one, unlike that house, which was a ranch, is a split entry or a raised ranch.
Right. And it 1750 is the square footage, but in the listing sheet, it gave you a disclaimer saying the square footage is approximate. What do you think about that?
Well, whenever I see approximate for square footage, the first thing I do is look at public record, which doesn't necessarily mean that that's the actual number, but it usually means there's going to be a very big discrepancy. So this listing sheet had 1750, square footage has it at 1240. That's a big difference. My recommendation to people who feel like their public record square footage is lower than the actual is for about $200, you can hire an architect to come in your home, measure your home, and then that gives you a firm number. So instead of putting an approximate number on a listing sheet, which people will assume is inflated, you'll have an accurate number to show them. And that way there's no question about how big the house really is.
Right, and your last point I think is one that's worth repeating, is that there's no questioning it. If you can say to a buyer, here's what public record has, but we're including this space down here, and here it's measured, and here it's laid out. I mean, that not only helps you, but it'll also help the buyer feel comfortable that what they're getting is a true reflection of its size.
Right, and dollars per square foot is key for a lot of people. And when you're talking about two numbers that are 500 square feet apart, tough to get a fair or accurate price for what you think the value of the home may be. On 403 Webster Street, that's a good location. We had a chance to take a look at that house. It sold 29 days. That's a good number right there. That shows for asking. Usually when you see a house sell for asking price, it goes a little bit quicker than that, wouldn't you say?
Yes, I would. As properties do stay on the market, they tend to, get further and further away from their asking price.
And a little more stale.
A little more stale. I mean, this one, when you hit it on the button, you get it on the button.
Yeah.
So, good job.
And 29 days, if that seems like a higher number, just wait. We're going to have even a higher number down the road a little bit for a house that sold at its list price. On 9 Savoy Road, I'm going to turn it over to my co-host, Ryan McDonnell, who I think can shed a little bit of light on this listing. Ryan, take it away.
Yeah, we were brought into this property by the homeowner because it's what we sort of refer to as a tweener. I mean, we looked at it as a candidate for redevelopment, but my partner and I decided right away that, hey, this is a house that's got some value to a homeowner, and we think that it's best suited for that use. And in the end of the day, we were ultimately wrong, and it did get sold to a builder who's going to redevelop the lot. But it just goes to show that it's not always black and white. What one person might think is the highest and best use for a property is different than what somebody else thinks. And in this case, it was right there on the border, and it did go to a builder. In fact, it went in a bidding war between two builders.
Right, 600,000 seems to be kind of that magic number in the premier neighborhoods, and so if a house is worth that, that's kind of the dilemma you find yourself in.
Yeah, and in this one, as you can see, I mean, it sold for $620, and we felt that number at the time, we felt it was high for the lot, and it just when two people want it, and that's what happens.
But it also goes to show that sometimes you don't get the pricing spot on, and that's okay because the market will tell you what it's worth anyway.
Right.
At 273 Manning Street, the listing agent said, in quote, and I quote, "This house has personality." When you have a house that has personality, such as 273 Manning Street, what does that make you think?
Well, I hope it's better than what happens when someone tells you that before your blind date. But, I mean, in this case, I think it was charming. I mean, you walked in there, you did have a good, at-home feeling. The house sold very quickly, and it sold for close to asking. So, And
it's close to the... closer a little bit to the in-town location, a good spot on Manning.
Definitely.
And personality, right, it's not this house is beautiful,
right,
or this house is athletic. I don't know. It has personality.
You really wanted to hang out with that house.
It's better, yeah, exactly. They're going to have a nice, long-lasting relationship as long as the buyers also had some personality. At 208 Hillcrest, they had an interesting note on this listing, which you see every once in a while, and that was a deadline for all offers to be reviewed by, I believe it was Sunday the 5th, but the date at this point is
irrelevant.
Irregardless, as some may say. The fact
Who
is,
says that?
Some people do.
Oh,
they get
boy.
regardless. But nevertheless, when you have a deadline like this on a listing, you better make sure that it's priced at least somewhat aggressively, because what agents tend to scoff at more than just about anything is a deadline on a listing that's been on the market for 50 days. Or better yet, if you're going to put the deadline on there and you don't get any offers, get rid of it immediately.
Yeah, make sure you edit that listing after the fact.
Yeah, because that indicates to me an agent who doesn't understand what the pricing should be for a listing if they're imposing this deadline that nobody seems to care about. But in this case, they did care about the deadline because the house sold in a short period of time, 5 days.
Yeah, and for over asking. So I mean, the whole point of that strategy is, like you said, to list it low, try to invite a competitive situation, and it worked out very well here for this homeowner and agent.
And we think things worked out pretty well for the person selling 43 Horace Street as well, because you seem to think that this house sold for a pretty high number, isn't that right?
I do. I mean, I think it's a lot of money for a house of this size, of this location, this lot size, the whole package. I think for $670 is a lot of money, and it's just it's a big decision buying a house. I think you really need to be very, very, very thorough in your diligence, and I'm questioning the decision to pay that amount of money for that house.
Right. Well, we talked about clues that the listing agent might not be from inside the town of Needham, but this might be a clue that potentially the buyer's agent might not be from Needham, and I think that was the case in this listing.
Right.
Let's just hope the buyer's not watching. We're going to leave Horace and go into town, specifically to 26 Linden Street, a good-sized house. Most people watching probably know that house. It's right next to the post office. Is it right? Was it right next door to the post office?
I believe, if not, then it's maybe one house removed. But huge lot. It's sort of a very picturesque home. It was, when we saw it, it was still in the midst of its renovations. And this is it got a good number. I was questionable because Linden Street, as you get further away from town, gets a little less desirable from just a sales value perspective. But this one did pretty well, I would say.
Right, and that house also was under agreement and then went back on the market and then went pretty quickly thereafter back under agreement. That particular house is in the Newman School District. The next one is in Broadmeadow. That's 20 Audrey. That's a lot of size. It's a big house, a corner lot, and sold for just $675. Thoughts on that one? I
think this is a great location. It's a good size lot. I mean, when you flip back to Horace, I mean, these two sold within $5,000 of each other, and the upside on Audrey, I think, is there. It's a big lot. It does need a little bit of work. The inside was a little dated.
It's also a split as compared to Audrey.
It's a split versus a Colonial, and that's a big factor, too. But at the end of the day, I think Audrey at $675 is a pretty good buy because of the space you're getting, the lot you're getting, the location, and what you can do to it inside.
Right. Well, as Jessica Yee might say, location, location, location.
And with exclamation points.
Hop, skip, and a jump back to Linden Street. 2 houses that sold on Linden Street. This is another one that people might recognize. It was the house that was initially pink when it was purchased, but then it was renovated and it was painted yellow. This is the one we were referring to earlier, sold for the same amount that it was listed for, yet 72 days on market. That's pretty startling, isn't it?
Yeah, you don't see that all the time, that's for sure. And it can maybe speaks to the resolve of the seller. And some sellers have a number in mind, and come hell or high water, they're going to get it, and this one did. That's
what I would consider a steely resolve. 161 Nehoiden Street is a home that was on the market for quite a while, but eventually found its way, selling for $700,000. A little bit of a busy street, but good-sized lot.
Yep. I mean, this is the flip side of the seller that has the resolve and is holding out for a number. They priced it a little high off the bat, and eventually it came down to $699 and sold for $7. So I think that the street and the renovations inside this house, the kitchen was done, but that was really it. I think they were hanging their hat on new kitchen, big yard, and it just didn't get the number they were looking for. 157
Lexington Avenue was a big lot and a good spot.
Yep. I mean, this is a large lot for Lexington Avenue. This is a great location. This house sold in a day for close to asking. I did notice, though, that the color of the house was moss, and that's not a color I'm familiar with.
Moss, yeah, I'm unfamiliar with that as well. 11 Rosemary was a large house.
Deceptively large.
That's what I was just going to say, deceptively large. Just look at the picture, folks.
Wow.
41 Sutton Road is the next one we go to. That sold for $735,000, 3% co-broke to the buyer's agent. What might that be for?
That's indicative of the fact that this went through a relocation company, and often the relo companies will pay a higher broker fee to both the seller and the listing agent. So that's where you see that there.
105 Pine Street is next up. This was a house that was a complete gut job. There was nothing in there but the studs. Needless to say, a lot of demand for that house on Pine Street, a really large lot, sold for $735,000. On 121 Grant, sold for $800,000, 20 grand above asking, Ryan?
Great location. That says it all right there. Move right in, good location, in town, near everything. I like it.
My notes here say that at one point there was a quote from you saying that it had a little teeny room.
It did have a little teeny room off of the kitchen. But hey, I mean, you know, some people have little teeny people that live here, and it's nice to be able to put them right next to the kitchen so they can play, color, watch TV while you keep your eye on them.
Right, that was just a teeny observation.
Well, because a lot of what we see in new construction and development is everybody wants the great room off the kitchen. This is a house that was built, you know, I don't have the date on me, but it wasn't anytime recently. Didn't have that big great room, but it still provided essentially the same functionality, just in a smaller scale. All
right, 110 Evelyn Road, as we kind of start to move through a few slides here, one right after the other, sold for $800,000. Original list $938. That's a big discount.
Yeah, this is the developer who did this property told me several months ago that he essentially wanted to pioneer this part of town from a development standpoint, and you know, God bless him, go get him. But he's you know, going from 938 to 800.
The next house is 51, how would you pronounce that?
I say Homsy.
I do too. 51 Homsy Lane, a younger house, had a wall TV that the listing agent said was excluded. The rule used to be if anything is affixed, it's included, but with the advent of wall TVs that are now mounted, people assume it's not included, and this one, the broker was careful.
Made sure to say it, yep.
At 185 Charles River Street, that's a great location. Ryan, you and I had both seen that house, and we agreed it was priced well when we saw it.
Yeah, I liked it. What I didn't care for, and this is just me, when you have listings that are done in all capital letters, I find them very hard to read, and you know, I think as agents we can all get together and say, let's do without that. 39
Stevens Road didn't have a listing in all caps, but it is on the Ladder Street, which would explain why it sold for a really good number for a pretty small lot.
Yep, Ladder Street means big numbers, assuming you're pricing it, you know, appropriately. This one got, I mean, $979 is a lot of money for a house this size, but you know, it's a great location.
And the lot was only 7,800 square feet.
Right.
At 35 Woodledge Road, the heating bill on that one might be a little pricey if we have a cold winter. How do we heat that one?
Combination of electric baseboard and oil, which is, if you want to be inefficient, those are the two to go with. But sometimes you can't help it.
23 Rybury Hillway sold for $1.04 million as we eclipse the $1 million barrier. And a house that everybody might recognize is located at 739 Great Plain Avenue. It's a new construction home.
Yeah, you know, people always ask me, oh, what's the deal with that house? And they say, because it really just jumps off on the corner of Manning and Webster. It's very large. It's doesn't have a lot of yard. I mean, it is what a lot of people have approached me at least and said, you know, we'd like to see new construction, not, you know, taking advantage of every possible square foot on the lot. And this is one of those houses, but, you know, for what it's worth, on the market for 6 days, and somebody loves it, so go get them.
And somebody loves 42 Alden. Alden was the benefactor of what seemed to be at the time, or has proven to be, an overpriced house on Stockdale. As a result, 42 Alden goes on the market at 1195, sells for that number after just 11 days. At 19 Colonial Road, there were quite a few price reductions in that one in a relatively short period of time. You don't see 5 price reductions in 85 days.
Right, that's somewhat rare. This house had a lot to like. I mean, it's one of those, we hear them called young houses. Had a great finished basement, huge, big game room. Like if you had kids, this is where they'd like to hang out. But like you said, I mean, it's better to price it right the first time and not go through all those iterations. Or if you're going to do the price reduction, do the price reduction and not go through little choppy ones to get to where you need to be.
New construction happened at 67 Wayne Road. They put some skylights in there, which you don't see too often with new constructions. A builder, I would say they make me a little bit nervous because water is enemy number one, and skylights sometimes can lead to that. At 368 Hillcrest Road, they finished the attic, not the basement. It seems to be a trend these days with many of the builders. You too?
I mean, we go both ways. I mean, the attic is typically considered to be square footage from an appraisal perspective. They give you more value out of the attic. And I think it's arbitrary because nowadays with new construction, these basements are every bit as finished as any other living space in the house. But you know, the attic is tried and true. The basement is still making its way in terms of valuation.
The new construction continues at 5 Newell Avenue. That's an in-town location. I think people think in town, they usually think the other side of Highland Ave, but Newell is just a hop, skip, and a jump away from town.
Yep, and this one sold. This was essentially a custom build. It sold in 2 days. It went off the market in 2 days in January. It closed in August. So this was essentially a sold pre-construction and a custom job.
All right, we're going to bust through that $1.5 million threshold now over to 131 Oxbow Road.
I mean, personally, I think this is a steal. I think the location, if you want to be in that part of town, where you know it's over sort of the Dover Wellesley area with the big lots. This has just had such unbelievable outdoor space overlooking, you know, the river, and they positioned the views really well. So you had great views out of the master, great views out of the office. The dining room is just really cool, and the pool at this property was like a resort. It was very tastefully done, and I think, you know, looking at it, its list price at 1.95, somebody picked it up for 1.54. I think that's a great price.
That's great. You have some listings where people don't even take pictures of the inside of the house, and on this one they have an aerial shot.
Right.
The last two that sold in the month of August in Needham were both on the same street, and the two highest sellers for the month. The first, 34 Carlton Drive.
Which I think is a steal at 155. I really do. I think this house was really cool.
Wow, a lot of steals.
Yeah, I
pricey
mean,
steals.
Yeah, good job on the part of some of these buyers. I think that's a great buy.
Is 20 Carlton Drive? Would you consider that to be a good?
Well, I mean, anytime you're talking about 226, I mean, there's not a lot to compare it to in Needham. I mean, this is a beautiful home. I mean, it was very well designed. You know, you tour it, and it's very grand. It's amazing. But you're paying 226, so it should be.
Yeah, for sure. So that concludes our look at all the homes that sold per MLS, single family, and Needham. Before we bid farewell, we wanted to give everybody a quick little snapshot at what is on the market currently in Needham. Anything jump out at you, Ryan?
Well, we have 90 active single family listings, down a little bit from last month. What really speaks to me right now is that you have a window, if you're a seller and a buyer, that the September, October, fall market is a pretty strong one. We always talk about the spring, we talk about the downtime in the summer and the winter, but this is still a chance. If you're on the fence thinking about listing your house, this is still a really good time to do it. And if you're a buyer, just know that the inventory levels are probably going to start to dwindle and that you might not have anything else to look at until next spring. So with the 90 active single family listings, we'll probably see some of that get absorbed this month. The average listing price is at $1.4 million. It's actually up from last month at 1.26, which is sort of surprising considering some of the big sales that we had.
I mean, astonishing is not a word I throw around too often, but over 1.4, we haven't seen that since we've started this show.
Yeah, that's high. That's high. And there's, I mean, again, we've talked about it. There is some new construction on the market, but you're right. I mean, that's a big number. Average days on market, 158 days for what's out there. You know, we typically have been seeing things down closer to 100. And those days on market will go up if these things aren't absorbed in the next couple of months, as I mentioned, because once you get into November, December, it's kind of, you know, see you next spring.
And the average list price up to $338. Do you think there will ever be a time where the average list price will actually be below the sales price for the previous month? Is that possibly mathematically?
I don't think so.
Yeah, I don't think so either. Yeah. It's interesting to see that relationship between the two.
Yeah.
If anybody would like to know what their house is worth, or if they are thinking about selling their house, or just want to get some information about the show in general, the number they should call should be appearing at the bottom of your screen momentarily, and there it goes. Ryan, just in case somebody has a hard time seeing that number, what is it?
781-707-6564.
And going ahead, you said you are bullish about the fall market?
I'm always bullish. I'm an upbeat kind of guy.
You are. You're very bullish.
Very optimistic.
But you think things are going to at least stay where they are, maybe uptick a little bit before we get to the holidays?
I would expect it to, sure.
All right. So there's still time if you want to jump in on this red-hot 2012 real estate market in Needham. But for the time being, our time, I believe, is up. That'll do it for Ryan McDonnell. My name is Rob Ticktin, and we will see you next time on What's My House Worth?